Why was a Navy SEAL commander saluting a civilian? The desert heat shimmered over the firing range, waves of distortion curling above scorched stone. A dozen SEAL candidates stood in a line, rifles in hand, their posture rigid. Next to them, a woman adjusted the brim of her warm gray cap. No stripes, no nameplate, no uniform, just a long, matte black case in silence that spoke louder than the men whispering behind her back. Some thought she was CIA. Others muttered stories about an Israeli defector with a kill record that scared even generals. No one knew the truth, and she wasn't offering any. The instructor barked distances, wind speeds, variables. Each sniper stepped up to the challenge. Some hit, some missed. Then it was her turn. She didn't flinch under the gaze, didn't ask for a wind call. She just lay down, breathed in, and pulled the trigger. Crack, dead center again. Crack. Another perfect hit. By the time the fifth shot landed, she'd completed the entire firing order in half the time of the best SEAL there, and no one knew how. To process what they'd seen, later, in the mess hall, she sat alone in the corner, cleaning her rifle in deliberate silence. A SEAL named Garza approached. "You ex-military?" he asked, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. She didn't look up, didn't answer. "I mean, respect's earned here. Doesn't matter who you know, only what you can do." Her voice, when it finally came, was low and razor-sharp. "Then earn it." Garza blinked. But she was already back to her rifle. The instructors started calling her ma'am. Then they stopped calling her anything except Whisper. But before she was Whisper, she was just Logan, a kid raised off-grid in the forests of Montana. No school, no TV, no backup plan, just wind, instinct, and a rifle handed to her by a father who taught her to hunt by feel, not formulas, when her parents died in a winter crash. Logan disappeared. Literally. No records, no sightings, just stories. Then she resurfaced at an illegal shooting match in Arizona. No fancy mods on her rifle, no spotter, and she cleaned house so brutally, one judge swore she hit a coin-sized target blindfolded. She didn't take the prize money, didn't even wait for applause. She just vanished again. Someone had been watching. He wasn't military, but he smelled of dark ops, black suit, government ID, eyes that didn't blink enough. He found her waitressing nights at a truck stop. "I'm not a recruiter," he told her. "Recruiters deal in resumes, I deal in outcomes." Then he slid the folder across the table. Target profiles, satellite, maps, classified data no one outside a war room should ever see. "I'm not military," she said. "That's why we want you." She didn't say yes, not right away. But 3 days later, she showed up at a private airstrip with just her rifle, a pack, and that same stare that made even the pilots look away. No questions, just one. "Where's the range?" They told her Camp Sentinel, a sniper crucible so elite most soldiers didn't even know it existed. SEALs, Delta, Recon, the best of the best. She arrived without rank or ribbons, the only woman in the class, the only one who walked like she. Didn't care if she belonged. "You think bullets care about your name?" she said to one soldier who questioned her presence. She didn't win them over with words. She won with shots that bent physics, with awareness that cut through fog and fear, with silence that wasn't empty, it was focused. Then came the blind shot exercise, 90 seconds, one moving target. No visual recon, no prep. She nailed it 950 yards. Through mist, brush, and a breeze that shifted by the second. Later that night, a SEAL named Hawk, who doubted her the loudest, handed her an MRE. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. She wasn't there to prove anything, only to make sure someone made it home. Then came Afghanistan, a high-value target, a SEAL team pinned down, their marksman wounded, and a sniper somewhere in the rocks gunning for blood. At midnight, Whisper received the coordinates. No briefing, no orders. Just a folded paper with 5 digits and a black chopper humming on standby. She moved alone to the high ridge, No one introduced her to the team. No one needed to. They'd heard the rumors. One commander whispered, "I don't care who she is. I just hope she's as good as they say." She was better. Her scope caught the shimmer of a sniper glint 800 yards out. No delay. One shot. Clean kill. No word spoken. Then hell broke loose. Machine guns. RPGs. Screams in Pashto. The SEALs were pinned. Radios buzzed. "Overwatch. Talk to me." She answered with bullets. 3 hostiles dropped in 5 seconds. Then came the final shot. A second sniper, more advanced, more deadly. 1,517 yards. Crosswind, moving sun, no time to second guess. She exhaled. Crack, target down. The red dot on the commander's chest disappeared. Back at the base, the CIA advisor fumed. She wasn't cleared for engagement. "She saved us all," the commander said. They argued over protocol. She cleaned her cracked scope in silence. Later, a pilot told her they were calling it a record. She didn't react. "They say you broke the rules," he added, her voice barely above the wind. "I didn't break them. I just ignored the ones that got in the way." She vanished before dawn. No sign out, no medal, no parade. Just stories. And one line in a mission report. Overwatch support provided by unidentified civilian asset. Unmatched precision likely turned the tide. A week later, at sniper school, a new instructor asked a class of wide-eyed trainees, "You know who made the longest shot in recent history? Saved a SEAL commander?" "Another SEAL?" Someone guessed. The instructor smiled. "Nope, no rank, no name. Just a call sign." He let the silence speak. They called her Whisper, and from that day on, every time a red dot danced where it shouldn't, someone hoped she was still watching. Why didn't she ever salute back? Camp Zulu was quiet under moonlight. When the helicopter touched down, Whisper stepped off without ceremony, wearing the same jacket, the same cap, and that same quiet gravity that followed her like a shadow. She didn't wait for orders. She already had them, etched in the 5 numbers they'd slipped into her hand hours before. Inside, the SEAL team was prepping for extraction. Their commander, Braddock, had a stitched gash over one brow and dried blood on his gloves. He saw her step through the tent flap and stared, just for a second. Then nodded once. That was all. "You've got Overwatch from the North Ridge," he said. "Our OE's hostile confirmed. No mistakes." "I don't make them," she replied. Not with arrogance, but with certainty. The mission was chaos. Dust storms, late drone feeds, civilians running under gunfire, and one sniper, the ghost, with the red dot aiming straight for Braddock's heart. She took the shot, 1,517 yards. Through heat, haze, wind, through another sniper's optic. One trigger pull, one breath, one life saved. Later, when the dust settled and the team reached the fallback point, they looked toward the ridge. She was gone. Braddock stormed into the command tent. Who cleared her to fire? He barked. She wasn't on the roster. The CIA advisor said, "She violated protocol." "She doesn't miss," Braddock snapped. "That's not the point." "No," Braddock said. "That's exactly the point." He left the tent, crossed the tarmac, and found her wiping down her rifle beneath the flickering floodlight. Her scope was cracked from the kill shot. She was silent, as always. "You broke a direct order," he said. "I followed a higher one. You saved my team." She locked her case shut. "That's not why I was there." He studied her. The way she moved, not like a soldier, but like something older, more instinctual. "You ever worn a uniform?" She shook her head. "Never swore an oath?" "I swore to the mission. That's enough." And then, without warning, Braddock removed his cap and stood at attention. He saluted her, not out of formality, not because he had to, because he'd seen something that shattered every chain of command and rewrote what it meant to lead. Whisper didn't return the gesture. He asked her why. She didn't smirk or soften. She just said it plainly. I don't take honors I didn't ask for. Hours later, she was gone. No one saw her leave. No aircraft manifest, no trace. Just a slip of paper left behind in her bunk. Protect the mission, not the myth. She had become a ghost again. But legends, real ones, don't vanish. They ripple. Week later, a hard case arrived at Naval Intelligence. Inside, her rifle, custom modified. Serial numbers scratched away by hand and a photo grainy. Steel framed of Braddock mid-exfil. Red dot glowing on his chest. Beneath it, another image. The enemy sniper. Blood frozen in his lens, one bullet, one truth. At the bottom, a message. One. Shot. Not for glory. For gravity. Braddock didn't speak when he saw it. He just closed the case and nodded, like she was still standing there. Word spread. You couldn't stop it. Operators in Syria, Jordan, Colombia, they all heard. The woman with no name. The sniper with no medals. The one who didn't miss. Didn't boast. Didn't stay in San Diego. A NATO field tech opened a data drive labeled Delete After Viewing. Inside, helmet cam footage from a failed mission. Gunfire. Chaos, then calm. Every enemy dropped. No visible shooter. Just the silhouette of a woman walking away through a breach in the wall. Her rifle slung like a shadow across her back. The timestamp matched the known Whisper sighting. She wasn't gone. Just somewhere the system couldn't reach. Back at Camp Sentinel, a new class of snipers lined up for training. The instructor paced. Slowly, boots crunching on gravel. You know how far the record is from this line? A recruit shook his head. 1,517 yards, he said. Crosswind, uphill, no spotter. Another asked, what rank was the shooter? No rank, the instructor replied. No uniform, just a call sign. What was it? He stopped walking. Whisper. Every trainee adjusted their grip on their rifle. Every sight was calibrated with more care. And in the forests of Montana, far from briefings, blood, and orders, a child followed deer tracks across frost. A whisper echoed in the distance, a shot so clean it felt like the air bowed around it. The buck dropped. The boy turned, but no one was there. Only a shimmer of sun on metal. Far off, watching, because she never wanted to be remembered. She wanted to be useful, and she still was. Why did she vanish right after the shot that changed everything? The CIA wanted a reprimand. The advisors wanted a report. Command wanted her erased. Paper trails, mission logs, all redacted before they were ever printed. But the SEALs? They just wanted her to stay alive. Whisper had done what no one else could. In a moment that split time like a blade, she'd pulled the trigger that saved a commander's life, a team's future, and a mission teetering on failure. No spotter, no backup, just one breath, one calculation. And a kill so perfect it stopped a bullet before it was ever fired. But she didn't wait for thanks. Didn't stick around for commendations or quiet handshakes in dark corners. She left her cot stripped clean. Deer gone. No exit log, no trace. On any manifest, she disappeared the way smoke leaves a battlefield. Slowly, invisibly, and only after you stop noticing. She left behind only one thing. A folded note on the cot. Mission complete. No longer required. No longer needed. Underneath was a photo. Braddock, mid-exfil. The red dot glowing on his vest like a curse. About to land. And beside it, a second photo. The enemy sniper. Blood streaking the scope. Bullet frozen in cracked glass. Below that, written in thick black marker. One shot. Not for glory, for gravity. Braddock stood over the case and read the note without a word. Then he stood at attention, not for her, but for what she represented. Precision without ego. Loyalty without a leash. A warrior born outside the system but more true to the mission than anyone inside it. But even legends leave fingerprints at the sniper school in Coronado. A new instructor walked the firing line. He wasn't interested in posture. He didn't care about the shine on your boots or how fast you rattled off specs. He cared if you could listen. Not just here, but really. Listen, he stopped beside a young shooter fumbling wind calls. You know how far the best shot ever made from this line was? He asked. The recruit shook his head. 1,517 yards, the instructor said. Crosswind, uphill. Saved a SEAL commander's life. Shooter wasn't in uniform, wasn't even part of the military. Just a woman with no rank and a call sign you'd better never forget. What was it? The recruit asked, eyes wide. The instructor smiled, just slightly. Whisper. And every trainee adjusted their aim. They didn't understand, not yet, but they would. Whisper's mark wasn't just on bodies. It was on minds, decisions, hesitation. Thresholds. She didn't just pull the trigger. She rewrote what it meant to deserve that moment, to earn it. Some say she went off-grid. Montana, maybe, or Alaska, living near wolves, living as one. Others claimed to see her at anonymous ranges, using fake names, disappearing before awards were handed out. A woman in civilian clothes, eyes like frost. Hitting targets others couldn't even see, but no one could prove it. No one really wanted. To somewhere, a Marine Corps instructor found a brass casing pinned to his paper target. Just a single fired round, polished clean. Below it, a handwritten note. Still watching, still listening, don't miss. No signature. There didn't need to be in quiet corners of the special operations community. Her influence spread like a ripple through deep water. Some instructors began calling it the whisper zone. That mental stillness just before the shot, when all distractions vanish and only the target remains. More shooters began refusing ego kills. More team leads started emphasizing civilian drills. In hot zones, her story never loud, never official, moved through whispered conversations. Between SEALs, Rangers, recon teams, Delta shooters, a shadow story passed in glances, in nods. In unspoken truths behind sandbags and scope lenses, and every once in a while, someone would mention her in a briefing, only to have a senior operator raise a brow and say, quietly, "Careful, she might be listening." Whisper didn't ask to be believed. She just made sure the right people knew. She was still out there, still protecting the mission, still ready. Parts 4 to 8 coming next. You said Colon 4 ChatGPT said, why do some warriors refuse to be remembered? She could have stayed. They would have let her after that shot. Whisper had earned her place in the shadows and the light. Field clearance, combat approval, even a quiet green light from the same gray-suited men who once said, observation only. They didn't question her anymore. No one did. But she walked away anyway. Not out of fear, not from fatigue, but because something inside her knew the longer she stayed, the more people would start seeing her as a legend instead of a responsibility. And that was dangerous, because Whisper didn't believe in legends. She believed in distance, in silence, in protecting those who couldn't afford to be wrong. And she couldn't do that while everyone kept looking at her. The SEALs told stories. Of course they did. Braddock spoke at a closed-door sniper symposium in Norfolk, Virginia, a room full of America's most elite precision shooters, some just back from West Africa, others on their way to Colombia. No cameras, no press, just silence and sweat. And the smell of burned carbon. He stood behind the mic and cleared his throat. The sheet in his hand stayed folded. You ever hear a story that changes how you pull a trigger? He asked. A few nodded. No one spoke. She never wore a name, never took orders like we do, never even joined the system, but she operated with more conscience and control than half the roster combined. He paused, scanning the room. Every operator was still. She saved my life. Took a shot from 1,517 yards. No time, no confirmation, just certainty. And then she disappeared. Didn't ask for anything. Not even a thank you. He tapped the podium once, softly. Now every time I sight in, I ask myself, would she take the shot? And if I can't say yes, I don't pull the trigger. Then he walked off stage. No applause, just recalibration, internal, quiet. Like her, she had become something more than a sniper. She was a measure, a whisper you weighed yourself against. She left no tracks, no forwarding address, but her fingerprints were everywhere. Instructors revised field exercises. Mission planners began including moral flexibility drills, not officially named, but internally referred to as Whisper Protocol. A nonprofit for veterans in Montana received a package, no sender, inside, a typed manuscript. Through the scope, ethics, distance, and the quiet mind. No author, no publisher, but the operators who read it knew. The words were too sharp to be theory, too raw to be fiction. Topics included breathing under panic fire, dialing for microbursts in high valleys, watching someone for 12 hours through a scope before making the shot, and the aftermath. When silence doesn't feel like peace, the final page read, "There is no glory in being the last line, only responsibility." They didn't sell it. They passed it hand to hand like sacred scripture. Copies circulated across teams, airdropped into FOBs, whispered about in sniper pits and behind blast walls. She didn't want to be found, but she wanted to be felt. In every team that walked into the unknown, she was there. Not in body, but in mindset. More than a ghost. She'd become a compass, still. Watching, still listening, don't miss. Why do some warriors refuse to be remembered? She could have stayed. They would have let her after that shot. Whisper had earned her place in the shadows and the light. Field clearance, combat approval, even a quiet green light from the same gray-suited men who once said, "Observation only." They didn't question her anymore. No one did. But she walked away anyway, not out of fear, not from fatigue, but because something inside her knew, the longer she stayed, the more people would start seeing her as a legend instead of a responsibility. And that was dangerous, because Whisper didn't believe in legends. She believed in distance, in silence, in protecting those who couldn't afford to be wrong. And she couldn't do that while everyone kept looking at her. The SEALs told stories. Of course they did. Braddock spoke at a closed-door sniper symposium in Norfolk, Virginia, a room full of America's most elite precision shooters, some just back from West Africa, others on their way to Colombia. No cameras, no press, just silence and sweat. And the smell of burned carbon. He stood behind the mic and cleared his throat. The sheet in his hand stayed folded. "You ever hear a story that changes how you pull a trigger?" he asked. A few nodded. No one spoke. She never wore a name, never took orders like we do, never even joined the system. But she operated with more conscience and control than half the roster combined. He paused, scanning the room. Every operator was still. "She saved my life." Took a shot from 1,517 yards. No time. No confirmation, just certainty. And then she disappeared. Didn't ask for anything, not even a thank you. He tapped the podium once, softly. Now every time I sight in, I ask myself, would she take this shot? And if I can't say yes, I don't pull the trigger. Then he walked off stage. No applause, just recalibration, internal, quiet. Like her, she had become something more than a sniper. She was a measure, a whisper you weighed yourself against. She left no tracks, no forwarding address, but her fingerprints were everywhere. Instructors revised field exercises. Mission planners began including moral flexibility drills, not officially named, but internally referred to as Whisper Protocol. A nonprofit for veterans in Montana received a package, no sender, inside, a typed manuscript. Through the scope, ethics, distance, and the quiet mind, no author, no publisher, but the operators who read it knew. The words were too sharp to be theory, too raw to be fiction. Topics included breathing under panic fire, dialing for microbursts in high valleys, watching someone for 12 hours through a scope before making the shot, and the aftermath. When silence doesn't feel like peace, the final page read, "There is no glory in being the last line, only responsibility." They didn't sell it. They passed it hand to hand like sacred scripture. Copies circulated across teams, airdropped into off. FOBs whispered about in sniper pits and behind blast walls. She didn't want to be found, but she wanted to be felt. In every team that walked into the unknown, she was there. Not in body, but in mindset. More than a ghost. She'd become a compass, still. Watching, still listening. Don't miss. Why do myths always start with silence? No medals, no flag-folded ceremony, no grainy footage on the evening news. Whisper didn't leave behind a name. She left behind a change, a camp sentinel. The elite sniper crucible buried deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains. A fresh class of shooters lined up beneath a sharp gray sky. One instructor, a former teammate from the Cooner operation, paced behind them. He stopped beside a trainee struggling to steady his breathing in the wind. "You know how far the record is from this line?" The recruit shook his head. 15-17, the instructor said. "Yards, crosswind, uphill, one shot. Saved a SEAL commander's life." The trainee's hands froze over his bolt. Who took the shot? She wasn't even in the military. He. Let the silence carry that weight. No rank, no name, just a call sign. Another recruit whispered. What was it? The instructor stepped back and simply said, "Whisper." They all recalibrated after that. You could feel it. A shift. A quiet reverence. Because the story wasn't about her. It was about what she forced them to confront. Precision without ego, violence without vanity, duty without demand for credit. And in that, she became untouchable. You couldn't train it. You couldn't brief it. You could only feel it. That someone was out there who made every shot mean something. In a dusty Montana bookstore, a combat medic browsing for field journals found a worn copy of Through the Scope. No barcode, no author listed, just a red cloth bookmark at chapter 11. The Whisper Zone, when time slows before it ends. A scribbled margin note read, "The shot isn't the burden, it's the decision." He bought the book for $3. It changed the way he triaged under fire. Whisper's fingerprints appeared again in Syria. A failed NATO mission. 4 soldiers trapped. Inside a collapsed school. Hostiles closing in. No chance. No air support. Just panic. Then the gunfire started. Single shots. Precise. Clean. Every enemy dropped before they could breach the outer wall. The helmet cam caught the silhouette of a figure moving through the rubble. Civilian gear. Rifle slung low. Gone before anyone could call out. The video made it to a secure server, encrypted, timestamp verified. And just like that, the analysts knew she wasn't gone. She just wasn't asking permission anymore. She was moving on her own terms. A ranger, sipping beer in a Jordan safe house, said it best. Some people operate for country, some for paycheck. She operates like the mission itself lives in her blood. Operators started telling each other, half joking, half terrified. If you ever see her at the edge of your range, shoot straight, because she's watching, and she doesn't miss. What happens when the mission becomes a person? Whisper had always been sharp, focused, unshakable. But even steel bends over time. Even ghosts carry weight. And her weight wasn't measured in kills or distance. It was measured in lives, the ones she saved, the ones she couldn't, the ones she was too late to reach. She never said it, never hinted at it, but those closest, or at least closest enough to feel her presence, saw it in small cracks, in the way she cleaned her rifle twice, in the same night, in the way her eyes scanned tree lines even during debriefs, in the way she'd pause, just for a breath too long, before pulling a trigger. It wasn't hesitation. It was memory. That's why she vanished. Again, not to escape the system. She'd never been in it. But to protect it, because when you become the last line, you start to believe you always have to be. And that's dangerous. She knew it. So she disappeared. But not completely. A dusty package arrived at a veteran nonprofit in Helena, Montana. No return address. Inside, a hand-bound manuscript with no title on the cover. First page, typed in bold. Through the scope, ethics, distance, and the quiet mind. It was filled with lessons only a ghost could write. How to breathe under incoming mortar fire. How to spot movement before wind even shifts. How to sit in silence for 12 hours with a target in your crosshairs and still decide not to shoot. One chapter ended with, sometimes pulling the trigger is mercy, other times it's erasure. Know the difference before you aim. Special Forces units began circulating it quietly. No public release. Just hard copies handed out to shooters deploying into uncertain zones. Operators started training differently. Less bravado, more control, more thinking, less twitch. Instructors taught not just how to shoot, but how to wait. And at the end of every lesson, they said one name, not loud, never loud, whisper. And then came the final confirmed sighting. A trail cam in Wyoming captured a blurry image, a woman alone, walking through early snowfall, long rifle slung across her back. She turned, just slightly, toward the lens, as if she knew, then vanished into the pines. No boots, no badge, no noise. But in her absence, she left something bend, not footprints, but principles, a way of being, a standard. What do you call someone who rewrites the rules, then walks away before anyone can thank them? Whisper didn't leave behind stories. She left behind standards. On a cold morning deep in Washington State, a Marine sniper instructor found something pinned to his target after a solo run. A single brass casing, polished to a mirror sheen, under it a hand-scrawled note. Still watching. Still listening. Don't miss. No name, no signature, no fingerprints. But every shooter on that range that day shot tighter groups, took deeper breaths, asked themselves the same question before pulling the trigger. Would she take this shot? Years passed. Wars shifted. Old enemies faded. New ones rose. But in the circles that didn't advertise, those who operated in classified zip codes, who moved under the veil of deniable operations, Whisper wasn't just remembered. She was invoked in briefing rooms, in sniper pits, in the final seconds before go time, and not with reverence, with discipline. Because she hadn't been a hero, she had been a mirror, a reminder that you don't need a flag on your shoulder to protect those behind it. 1 year after the Red Dot shot, Lieutenant Commander Kyle Braddock stepped onto a stage in front of the most elite sharpshooters in the world. He didn't speak from notes. She never wore a uniform. He said, never asked for anything, but she made the shot that saved my life. Silence. You don't forget someone like that. You measure yourself against them. He paused. And if you can say honestly that you pulled the trigger with certainty, with conscience, without ego, then you're not just a sniper. He tapped the podium once. You're a guardian. And then he walked off. No applause, no fanfare. But every shooter in that room cleaned their rifle a little slower that night, more deliberately. Because Whisper had become something sacred. Not a myth, not a memory, a benchmark. Somewhere, it was said, she taught survival courses in the Idaho wilderness under a fake name. Never talked about weapons, but her eyes? They scanned every tree line like she was waiting for ghosts. There were stories, always more stories, but no one chased her down. Because you don't chase down a legend, you carry it forward. Why some legends never want to be remembered? In the end, Whisper wasn't erased. She chose to disappear. Not because she feared the light, but because she feared what the light does. It blinds, it distorts, it turns duty into decoration, skill into spectacle, and she had never once pulled a trigger for applause. Her story didn't end in a blaze of glory. It ended the way she lived, quietly, precisely, unforgettably. Some say she's still out there, a shadow on the edge of a clearing, a whisper in the scope, a flicker of light that vanishes before you can confirm it. Others say she became something more, not just a sniper, but a philosophy. A code passed in silence from one warrior to another. One shot. Not for glory, for gravity. In elite circles, they still teach her principles. Never in a textbook, only in moments. The seconds before a high-value shot. The pause before exfil. The flick of wind across a shooter's cheek. They call it the whisper zone. That stillness, that certainty, that space where ego dies. And duty begins, and somewhere, far from war and blood, and men in suits who think they control the world, a child followed deer tracks through frost-covered brush, raised a .22 with small, shaking hands. A faint sound echoed in the mountains. A shot so clean, it felt like nature itself had fired it. The buck dropped instantly. The child turned. There was no one there, just the shimmer of something on the far ridge. A quiet glint, a glimmer of metal, and a father standing nearby. A former Marine grinned to himself, not surprised, not alarmed, because he knew, somewhere out there, she was still watching, still choosing, still listening for the one moment when everything depends on a single pull of the trigger. They never wrote her name in the history books, but among those who understand what it means to be the last line, they still speak of her, softly, carefully, respectfully, because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts and then walks. Away, without a salute, without a sound, just a whisper in the wind that says, I was here. I didn't miss, and someone came home because of it.